Hello, my brothers and sisters, and welcome to another episode of Off the Beaten Path, the show that deals with paranormal events throughout history, as well as in modern day times. As always, I'm your host, Rev.Hagen. Welcome. Before we get to our story, I would like to welcome all the listeners at SCRMradio. That's SCRMradio.com. Scream Radio, the only 24-hour live streaming horror radio station in existence. We're very excited to be a part of these guys. A lot of really fun stuff happening. Please stay tuned for new shows that are coming up, not just here, but as well as track on Scream. So again, welcome to our listeners there. We're really happy to be a part of the show, or a part of their radio program. We're always happy to be a part of this show. Now, what we're going to be looking at today is what I affectionately call Germany's Roswell. All right. Now, of course, Germany does not have a town called Roswell, but the United States does. And in July of 1947, a UFO crashed outside of the town of Roswell on somebody's ranch, and the Air Force picked up the wreckage. How do we know this, you ask? Because the Air Force told us so. The Air Force says, we have captured a flying disc. Sent it out on the AP, and it went worldwide. It went like wildfire worldwide. Of course, the next day, the Air Force said, oh, no. It wasn't a flying disc at all. I don't know what we were thinking. It was a weather balloon, an easy mistake. I'd buy that if it wasn't that it was the 509th that found and recovered this wreckage. The 509th were the guys that dropped the bomb on Nagasaki and Hiroshima. These were the elite of the elite at the time. And the intelligence corps that was there, and believe it or not, it's the intelligence corps in the Army that identifies different objects, whether it's guns, tanks, vehicles, airplanes, and the Air Force was still a part of the Army at this time. So I don't buy it. But that's what the Roswell incident was, and that's what has set off modern-day ufology, is the Roswell incident. So that was in 1947. Now, in the summer of 1936, supposedly, a disc crashed in Freiburg, Germany, in a clearing in the forest of Freiburg, Germany. Now, within hours, Heinrich Himmler, who was in charge of the SS, sealed the area, put the UFO on the back of a truck, and took it to parts unknown, to a secret location. A lot of that's speculation, but there were some deathbed confessions, and a lot of this comes from our knowledge that we gathered from Operation Paperclip, where a lot of the scientists at the time came over, and SS, don't kid yourself, came over and joined America instead of being prosecuted. We needed them for not just our Air Force and for our rocket industry that would become NASA and our science division, but as well as our espionage. And the SS was fantastic at that, as horrible as they were as human beings. So, went off the UFO, captured by Himmler, leader of the SS, goes to parts unknown. My personal view is that it went to SS headquarters at the castle of Wewelsburg. Wewelsburg, a very hard word for me to say, but if you look at this castle, it's got 3 turrets, right? And it's in a triangle shape. One of the castle turrets is circular. Now, below in the basement of that turret was this occult setup, where there was an altar in the middle. There were chairs all around the circle. They performed occult rituals here, supposedly magical rituals. Now, remember, Himmler, the upper echelon of the Nazi Party, and specifically the SS, were seeped in the occult, fascinated by it, and especially Himmler, driven by it. They really believed that through the occult they could achieve the master race, which was their ultimate goal, to have the master race rule the world. They believed that the Aryans were this master race of people that ended up having to go underground, literally underground, like live beneath the earth because of some horrible catastrophe that happened on the surface of the earth. Whether it was natural or unnatural is still a little unclear in their theology of these events, of the Nazi theology. And I'm not endorsing Nazism in any way, shape, or form here. Let me be clear about that. But the SS they were all about it. So I believe that would probably be a likely location or one of the labs close by. Now, also at this castle, at the SS headquarters, horrible things were done. Not to human beings, weird experimentations on human beings, on different sciences, with the occult. So it's pretty fascinating. That's why I believe that that's where it was taken, along with its occupants. That there's no record whether they survived or they're deceased. Now, Hitler at the time, supposedly, arranged for his best scientists to dive into this and find out everything they could about the UFO and its occupants, and to use that to help them in their goal, which at the time was to defeat not defeat the Allies, but help them with their goal of defeating their enemies and ruling the world, right? One of the scientists that they supposedly wrangled into this was this guy, Victor Strawberger. Now, Victor Strawberger was working on a device, and this we do know, that was an anti-gravitational device that looked a lot like a UFO, for being honest. At least the craft that this device went into looked amazingly like a UFO. And he called this device the Vril. It was called the Vril device. What's fascinating about the Vril device and ship is the name itself. Now, before we get into that, the other thing that is known about Victor Strawberger was this quote of his, which is a very strange quote, and I'm going to lay it on you here. I'm going to read it because I think we should get this word for word. It says, "Implosion is no invention in the conventional sense, but rather the renaissance of ancient knowledge lost over the course of time." Isn't that a strange thing, you think, for a scientist to say? It runs parallel to a lot of occult beliefs that a lot of technology is actually just a rediscovering of things that have been lost over time. That our ancestors were not these primitive idiots, right? But they actually had a thriving civilization that went away, much like after the fall of the Roman Empire during the Dark Ages, where we went from having, sewage and these amazing gig going on, indoor plumbing, for God's sakes, to living in hovels again, and a lot of that knowledge was lost. The loss of the library in Alexandria. I can do example after example of us having a lot of esoteric and technological knowledge, and then reverting back to a primitive state, which I find very interesting. But anyway, that's what he's alluding to in this post, which is, again, for a German scientist, I just find fascinating. So he named this anti-gravitational device Vril. What's that term? Well, there was a Vril Society. Now, the Vril Society was led by a woman named Maria Orsic. Now, Ms. Orsic was a very famous psychic from Austria. She was born in Vienna. She endorsed the annexation of Austria to Germany, to Nazi Germany, which was kind of fascinating. She moved to Munich in 1919, and she, after that move to Munich, she got in contact with a lot of fringe society, a lot of esoteric kind of secret society groups, one of which is the Thule Society. The reason that's so important, and this is going to get complicated, you guys, so you got to pay attention and work with me here, okay? Now, the Thule Society had a lot of noted members to it, namely the Fuhrer, Adolf Hitler, Heimlich Himmler, the leader of the SS. A lot of the other bigwigs in the Nazi Party were part of the Thule Society. So once Maria Orsic, started hanging out with these guys, she developed her own secret society called the Vril Society. Now, when you dig deep into the Vril Society, and I'm just going to do this for a couple of minutes here, they were all about that there was another world where Vril was this form of energy that was abundant. It was everywhere, and it could power machines. It was and the world that Vril belonged to. Vril was everything, right? The Mayana, the mana, if you will, the force that powered everything. So anyway, she was a medium of her time. She said that she could not only talk to the dead, but talk to alien races. And excuse there's going to be sirens and all kinds of things going off here today because it's the 4th of July, and I don't have a soundproof room. So what can you do? But anywho's, she could talk to not only the dead, but she could talk to alien races from other solar systems. And she quoted this way before 1936, when this supposed crash happened. So, if you believe this kind of gig, and believe in all these things, what we do know for certain so far in the narrative is that there was a German scientist named Victor Strauberg. He did invent a anti-gravitational device called the Vril. There was a woman named Maria Orsic that ran the Vril Society that kind of got its boost from the Thule Society. Now, the next step in our little story here is Hitler contacting Maria Orsic to talk to these aliens, to find out whether they were alive or dead. Because she was a medium, was inconsequential. But to talk to these aliens and to find out everything she could to help them achieve their goals, right? And we've already been over ad nauseum what their goals were. So apparently she did. She talked to these guys. She's quoted as saying around this period of time that the fastest of all flying things was thought. That's a direct quote from Maria Orsic. After supposedly this happened, and during this time in history, all of a sudden, secret missions and submarines are sent all over the world looking for things, looking for esoteric things, but 3 things in particular. What they were looking for, that we know they were looking for sure, was the Holy Grail, the Cup of Christ, the Ark of the Covenant, and the Spear of Destiny. Now, the Ark of the Covenant, of course, is what held the 10 Commandments after Moses came down off of Mount Sinai and had the 10 laws of the land, the 10 Commandments. They were put into the Ark of the Covenant, and if you're an Indiana Jones fan in any way, shape, or form, you know that the Ark was supposedly had the power to level mountains. That the Israelites had this at the front of their armies, and they were undefeatable. The Spear of Destiny now, supposedly it's the spear that cut the side of Christ, and that was ultimately what killed the Christ. One of the reasons it's such a holy object, not just for it killing Christ, if you believe in that kind of thing, but it had the blood of Christ on it. It had part of the divine, the DNA, if you will, of a living God. So we do know that they found the Spear of Destiny. The other 2 we don't know about. Nobody knows what happened to the Ark of the Covenant, and nobody knows what happened to the Cup of Christ at all. What's interesting is my first name is Christopher, which was a station in the Templars that meant Christ bearer. And there's speculation whether or not if you were Christopher within the Knights Templar and back in the day, were you in charge of the Shroud of Turin? Were you in charge of the Cup of Christ? It was a station that had to do with being in charge with something to do with Jesus. Interesting, since I'm not a Christian, since I follow the Norse gods. But I digress once again, which I'm apt to do. So we've got Maria, who communicated with the aliens, supposedly, right? Gave the information to Hitler, and his people went off out and about collecting these things, right? What's really interesting here is that a lot of people believe that in our own country in Roswell, that our government made a pact with the aliens, right, for technology, and that we gave them the okay to go ahead and abduct certain people, right, certain bloodlines, to do genetic experiments, get to know humanity more, maybe make hybrid races. Man, I know we're jumping down the rabbit hole here, but a lot of people really believe this. There's another belief that the Nazis were actually the first human race to make a covenant or a deal with the alien races, and to get alien technology through this communication from Maria Orsic. Now, what's fascinating about this is some people say, well, what did the Germans give the aliens? Well, the Germans believed that we know they believed that the Jews, the Gypsies, anybody that wasn't purely Aryan was beneath them, wasn't even human. Look what they did to the Jews. Look at the horrible experimentations, the extermination. 6 million people of Jewish descent died at the hands of the Nazis, and many and other races too, but specifically the Jews. So they have this huge stockpile of what they didn't consider humanity, but you better believe that the aliens, I bet, sure did. So a lot of people believe that they were the first to make this deal with the Greys, specifically with these aliens, which I find very, very interesting. So now they're scouring the globe, and they've decided that they need a place to do experiments with not only this technology, but with some of the more esoteric stuff, a larger space, a huge base, and also maybe a place where they could go if the war didn't quite go the way they wanted to, a place to retreat to. So they were scouring the planet for this. They decided to actually go to Antarctica, to look at Antarctica as a place of a possibility there. Now, in 1938, they actually approached an American, Admiral Byrd. Admiral Byrd had flown over the North Pole and the South Pole. He had made expeditions to Antarctica, so they approached him. They approached Admiral Byrd and said, "Hey, would you be willing to go to Antarctica with us to explore?" And he politely, actually, turned them down. Said no, sorry. So they went anyway. They did a couple of expeditions, and what they said that they found, and this part of the story is all documented. This is not Hagen just being crazy. The Rev has not lost his mind, my brothers and sisters. All right. What they said that they found were a thermal area that had lakes and vegetation. In other words, they found a cave in the ice, an opening in the ice, and they went in there and they found this kind of little oasis with vegetation, with warm water from these thermals that were supposedly coming up from the seabed. This led Himmler had decided then, let's build a base. Let's build a base in Antarctica. The base was codenamed Station 211. This part is all documented. Whether it actually happened or not is where the speculation comes in. But Station 211 was what was born out of that. Now, and it was announced by an admiral, a Nazi admiral, who said, and I'm going to read this, "The German submarine fleet is proud of having built for the Fuhrer in another part of the world a Shangri-La on land, an impregnable, man, I get tongue-tied, an impregnable, there you go, fortress." So this was announced by one of the admirals in the Nazi fleet, in the Nazi Navy, that they had built it. They had built this Shangri-La, this impregnable forest. There you go, or fortress. And supposedly that's where they stored the Holy Lance and a lot of the art and gold that still has never been recovered from the Nazi Party. There are also rumors that as they were digging this out, as they were making this Shangri-La, as they put it, they found some secret chambers that had writings in it that that were pre-flood, if you believe in the flood story, or ancient manuscripts. Some people even believed that some of these manuscripts were from Atlantis. Like I said, we are down the rabbit hole, my brothers and sisters, on this one. So, allegedly, there were writings that could have been from Atlantis, but were before the time of Noah, if you believe in that kind of thing. I'd like to say something here, too. What I find fascinating about the Nazi Party is that a lot of the objects that they were obsessed with getting were directly related to the Israelites, to the Jews. So this radical hatred for this group of people. And yet, all their mysticism came from these guys. What a weird dichotomy there. That's just me. I just find that absolutely fascinating. Now, we're kind of coming to the end of this journey that we're on here, but it all ties in. There are a lot of people that believe that Hitler did not die in Berlin, that Hitler and Eva Braun didn't die then, that they were spirited off to Argentina. Now, there is some kind of proof for this. The blood that they found in the bunker did not match Hitler's blood type, which I find kind of fascinating. And some other stuff that I won't get into because that's almost another show. So the theory is that Hitler and Eva Braun went to Argentina, and from Argentina were taken by submarine to Station 211, to Station 211. And to start, supposedly, it wasn't just Hitler. That when Berlin started, when we realized, when the Germans realized that they were not going to win the war, they started taking the loot, taking the gold, all their treasures to Station 211 via submarine, right? We know that a lot of the submarines that the Nazis had disappeared. We have no idea what happened to them. What's very interesting is that 3 months after the war, the Allies caught 2 submarines off the coast of Argentina that were fully staffed but had no cargo. They had no coordinate information, no map information at all on these submarines. And it was believed, or it's believed by some people, that these were the 2 that dropped off Hitler and Eva Braun, that his wife Eva, into Station 211, and were coming back and got caught. Now, we're going to be jumping a little further down the rabbit hole, but there is some proof to back some of this up. The deal is that supposedly one of the crew spilled the beans, okay? And Admiral Byrd, let me see if I can find this information for you here. Admiral Byrd was sent on an expedition to Antarctica. This we know is true. And it was actually called Operation High Jump, which is a very strange thing to call an operation that's going down to Antarctica, down to the South Pole. But regardless, that's what it was called. Now, this expedition had 4,700 men, 13 ships, as well as multiple kinds of aircraft on it, to go to Antarctica. This fleet headed out to Antarctica. The scale was absolutely huge. They held a huge press conference where Admiral Byrd said, "Yeah, we're going down there. It's a naval exercise to see how we perform in Arctic conditions." Was how this thing was touted. It had to be an immensely expensive gig. Now, the people that believe in Station 211 and that the Nazis went there to form the Fourth Reich to continue the Nazi agenda believe that Admiral Byrd went there to wipe these guys out, that one of the crew members spilled the beans about Station 211, and that Admiral Byrd was sent to do the job of wiping these guys out. Now, supposedly, when they got there, they were confronted when they actually found the opening for Station 211 and went in to take it out. And here we go. A bunch of UFOs came out of the ocean, not out of the opening, but out of the ocean, and attacked Admiral Byrd and his fleet. There were also supposedly men in German uniforms firing from the opening. firing very strange sonic weapons that were taking it to Admiral Byrd and his fleet. So much so that they retreated. What we do know is that thousands of lives were lost in this. Ships were lost in this expedition. And instead of an 8-month expedition that it was supposed to be, they came back in 2 weeks. From 8 months to 2 weeks. Without a huge explanation, or actually no explanation given to the public for why they came back so soon. There was also tons of speculation. Did they succeed? According to people that were there, no. The reason that we know that have any of this information about any kind of battle that happened on Station 211 or around Station 211 in Antarctica is from deathbed confessions from some of the sailors that were involved in this operation. Man, I know a lot of people are kind of skeptical about that kind of confession, but to me, there's almost no better confession than a deathbed. You've got nothing to lose. Why are you going to lie on your deathbed about something like this? And it's from more than one source. In fact, up to and over supposedly 20 deathbed confessions occurred to corroborate this story. On their way back, when this was done, Admiral Byrd gave an interview to a very prestigious Chilean paper, who quoted him as saying, "Admiral Byrd declared today that it was imperative for the U.S. to initiate defensive measures against the possible invasion of the country by hostile aircraft operating from the polar regions. As records to the recently terminated exercise," Byrd said, "the most important result of the observation and discoveries made in this the current potential effect they will have on the security of the United States." It was rumored that he also warned people of the craft that could, get this, he warned people in Chile and when he got home that there were craft that he saw there that could travel from pole to pole, from the South Pole to the North Pole in 2 minutes. Now that seems a little insanity, crazy talk, right? But according to Admiral Byrd, who had flown both poles himself, had done all kinds of exploration in an airplane, that he had encountered craft that could go from pole to pole within 2 minutes. It was even rumored that he met with the president when he came home and told the president to drop atomic bombs on Station 211, on the coordinates that he had for Station 211 in Antarctica. Wild, absolutely wild. So let's go back and track these events, all right? Supposedly there was a crash in Germany, in Freiburg, Germany. The Nazis got a hold of alien technology. They actually interviewed the aliens via Maria Orsic, who told them to go out and find these holy relics. They did find the Spear of Destiny that was never recovered. They did recover something that they thought was the Spear of Destiny that looked just like the Spear of Destiny, but further testing proved that it was not the actual Spear of Destiny. So nobody knows where that is today. And the Holy Grail and the Ark of the Covenant. Now, they didn't find, supposedly, the Holy Grail or the Ark of the Covenant. After this, Himmler decides to make a secret base so they can do some testing and hope maybe have a hidey hole or an actual fortress to retreat to if the war didn't turn out the way they thought it did. And according to Admiral, the speculation about Admiral Byrd's expedition to Antarctica, it was there to wipe out the remnants of the Nazi Party at Station 211 that we know that did exist through papers that we found after the end of World War II, papers about the Nazi Party. So that's our timeline, and that's what we have. Whether or not this really happened, we don't know. The facts that I presented as facts are things that we know for certain. But what a fascinating gig. What a fascinating story. For me, this kind of thing, right? And the other things that we've talked about on this show, the Tunguska blast, the Lady of Fatima incident, vampires, Bigfoot, werewolves, zombies, they make the world magical. Now, the reason I say that is because we live in right now, we live in very uncertain times, okay? The current state of the world as far as politics and the way how the world's getting along, even in our country, how our country gets along together with opposing views, it's a scary time to be around. And to me, stories like this, things that are magical, things that are, how can that possibly happen, are the things that make life worth living. That maybe there are aliens out there, right? Maybe ghosts do exist. Who knows? Maybe there are wizards. Maybe there are occult people out there that can actually do things with magic. What a world that would be. And frankly, that's the world that I live in. Now, not everybody lives in that world. And you may say, Rev, you're completely insane. And I respect your opinion. And there may be some documentation to back up that belief, but I don't believe it. So that's our show. That's our show for today. Forgive my ramblings at the end there, but I just think that this is such an incredible world that we live in. And to close your eyes to certain events because they don't fit into certain paradigms is not the way to learn. It's not the way to live. So, to all those of you out there, again on SCRMradio, I hope you enjoyed the show. Sure enjoyed making it for you. And as always, my brothers and sisters, you keep those heads up. Until next time.